All right, so we're finally back. Sorry that we missed last month. You know, it's been kind of busy around here.
Kind of busy. We shipped something.
Hey, man, speaking of which, you guys realize that we have a different face. It's my co-host now, Ale Contenti.
Hey, welcome.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming to the show.
Thank you, man.
This
Thanks
is
for
be
everything. It's going to be great.
Cool.
Yeah, great fan. Great
now,
fan.
you guys recognize him. He was on the first show that we did.
Yeah.
What do you do exactly?
So I have to think about it.
Yeah.
I'm the dev manager for Visual C++. So under me there is a lot of teams that, with a lot of devs that actually do work. I don't do anything.
Oh, come on.
But we do the front-end compiler, where we add features that the standard bodies, think they are suitable to add to the C++. Then we have the libraries team where we do, classic library like C runtime and MFC and ATL, but also all new libraries like all the STL, the PPL library for parallel path, the PPL task to do async stuff.
Yes.
And we also try new things like Casablanca.
Yeah.
Casablanca rocks.
Absolutely.
And, so then we have the IDE team that does IDE, that does IntelliSense, and the project and build team that builds your project and loads these 20 million files projects, whatever. And then we have also the C++ AMP team that we do acceleration for the graphics cards and so on.
Excellent. C++ on the GPU.
And we have also the PIX debugger, the parallel debugger, and the debugger for graphics application for DX games and DX application. That's a beautiful thing, man.
That sounds like something we should get on this show.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, it's also very useful for the new apps you want to write. Very DX, very immersive, with a lot of power. Yes, something we should show. And
excellent.
It's not super easy to do DX application, DirectX application, but C++, man.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
So hey, this is a shout out because I know Diego's probably watching this. How you doing, man? We miss you. But hey, we got another accent, another Latin.
Yeah,
you can only be Latin on the show. That's how we roll.
That's it.
In this case, it's Italian. You're from northern Italy.
I'm from near Milan.
Excellent,
near
man.
Bergamo. Yeah.
Cool.
Actually, I came here in 2000. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, you came as a C++ developer?
Yeah, basically. Yes.
Excellent, man.
Yes. Always
welcome.
stayed in Visual Studio. Yeah.
Cool.
Pretty cool.
So speaking about Visual C++ and VC11, which of course last time was VC10, even though it's 2012, we're talking about the iteration of a VC product.
If you look at the version on the compiler,
you got it.
That is of course another version, but it doesn't matter.
So your team worked on that a lot.
And
that's the focus of today's topic.
Yes. Okay. So we build a lot of things there. We focused a lot on enabling Windows 8 application, Windows 8 Store application.
Yes.
And we also focus on on bringing up, especially in the C++ libraries, a bunch of C++ 11 standard related libraries like standard threads. Of course we had already features like lambdas and so on, but we also added things like PPL tasks that we actually try to eventually have in the standard. We are talking a lot. Yeah, we have a great relationship there, right? Come on.
Totally. Hey, man, Herb Sutter is the chairman.
Yeah, I know. Come on.
It's a friendly place, too. I mean, Bjorn is on. I mean, it's a lot of good things have happened this year for C++.
Yes.
For sure.
Yep, I know.
And one of the things, speaking of which, I was down, fortunately, at C++ and Beyond 2012.
That was pretty cool.
As I said last year, you guys need to get down there. I would have liked to have seen more Niners at the event. And people who watch this show. It's a great affair.
Yeah.
It turns out, based on surveys that Herb, Andre, and Scott do for people who attend the event, there's about 100 people there this year.
That's pretty nice.
They ask them, are you allowed to ship products using C++ 11 features? And a large percentage of people said yes.
Yes.
So they're shipping. So C++ 11 has shipped and is shipping inside of people's production code.
Yes.
That's great. So auto, lambda, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we are seeing more and more code moving forward and using this thing. Inside Microsoft.
Cool.
Libraries. I love libraries, man.
You do.
They rock.
Speaking of libraries, you are the grand boss of both Mahmoud, who's CRT man, and STL.
Yes, and Stefan.
Who's STL man? Right on.
And I was a libraries dev myself.
Yeah. Okay.
2 years ago. So it's
cool.
First love.
Good.
Yes, but I love it. I like everybody in the team.
Of course, you have a great team. My hope is that some of them are on vacation.
Yeah, couple.
Okay, couple only, yeah. Because as you know, it seems like you guys just ship and then immediately start revving on the next stuff that you need to get out, which I think is impressive, but I would recommend you guys take a break.
Yeah, but we also want to understand how customers, use the product,
Yeah.
So write the app, what's the pain point, man? Which libraries you need better, which features you need better, where do you need it faster or slower, or better template, better samples. We've been dog fooded, we've been writing apps, but the multiplying effect to go opening up, that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
So we want that feedback.
Today's topic is, this is a longer constructor than normal.
Right, sorry.
Because we have a new face, man.
We
have a new object. Or an interface.
Yes.
No, it's great, man. It's good to talk.
That's good.
We're going to go talk to your peers.
Yep.
The guys who run sort of the all-up VC++ stuff is Steve Teixeira.
Yeah.
And then we have the GPM of like your peer, but on the PM side, right?
Yeah.
And that's Tarek.
Yeah, Steve is overall, ownership of C++ from the PM side.
Cool.
We had actually a lot of interviews. I don't know if they remember, but we had a great interview at TechEd, I remember, a long time ago. Steve, me, and I don't remember. No, maybe Herb, yes. It was great.
Somebody.
It was
somebody.
fun.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a GoingNative Live.
Yeah.
You guys can see that. You've seen that. That was like a couple of years ago.
Yes, something like that.
So I'm going to go interview them, and guess what we're going to talk about? The incredible work that you and your team have done and their teams to pull off VC11 and Visual Studio 2012 out the door, RCHAM available for MSDN subscribers.
Go download, install, play with it.
Rock and roll. So congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Great work.
Absolutely.
All right, so latest episode of C9 Going Native. We're with Steve Teixeira and Tarek Madkour. What do you guys do? Now, Tarek, you've been on this before because you came into our studio back when Diego was here. Now, of course, it's Ale, who's my co-conspirator. What do you guys do? Like, what's your role here?
I'm the GPM for Visual C++, and my team basically delivers all the good stuff that you're seeing in Dev 11 from an IDE, from compiler or libraries perspective. A lot of great things to talk about.
Excellent.
Yep. And I'm the director of PM for the Visual Studio platform.
Awesome.
And it includes C++, it includes some Visual Studio stuff, but kind of the whole core customer experience for how we write code.
Great. And of course, you run live not too long ago from Amsterdam, so it's great to see you.
That was
again,
great.
Man.
Good to see you too.
Right on. So let's jump right into this. This is all about VC11, which is RTM. It's actually in developers' hands now, at least people with MSDN subscriptions. Congratulations, rock and roll.
Thank you.
I wanted to kind of just talk about like what are some of the high-level great things you guys have delivered, and then of course talk about what's being worked on. So let's start there.
I would say, first of all, it's surprising that so many people are in the office since we just shipped. This is kind of a testament to how we build software in the modern day. It used to be that like we'd spend 3 years working on a release, and then everybody would go on vacation for a while after we finally shipped the thing. This release was a little bit more compressed than the past. It was about a couple-year cycle, and folks are like right back to the grindstone, like trying to deliver the next set of customer values. So there's no rest for the weary.
Wow.
But we're really, really excited about what we've shipped in this release in Visual Studio 2012 for C++. We had a blog post that went up a couple days ago, and I just read. I mean, I work on the team. I read through it, and it was long. Like there is a ton of new stuff in this release that as you're working through it in the kind of the fog of war, you don't realize like all the things you're doing. But Tarek, maybe you kick it off, and what are some of your favorite things that are in this release?
Oh, so my most favorite thing is working on Windows 8. I think every time we ship a release of Visual C++, we try to have at least two things in there. One of them is how can you create the best applications on Windows? And the other one is, how do we make sure that you take the full advantage of what C++ has to offer? This release, if I were to pick two things that are my complete favorites, it would be first our support for Windows 8. I think it is fantastic that now we have a new UI framework with XAML, with native support for C++, all compiled native code, and a great Windows 8 story to tell there. And also in the, we support you in creating great applications in C++. I think both our, the new things that we added in C++ 11 and also the auto vectorization and automatically making your code run faster just by recompiling. I think that's three great things that that I think are people are really going to appreciate.
Absolutely.
Going faster is probably my favorite thing in this release, and we've done it on a number of different dimensions. One is vectorization, which you just mentioned. Like, hey, I can recompile my app. If the compiler sees, hey, this loop looks like it can be vectorized, I can use SSE instructions. Maybe it just goes 4 times faster. I don't have to do much. The other one is some improvements we made in the parallel computing space, particularly around asynchrony. Asynchrony is a big deal in Windows 8, and in C++, it's really easy to do that with a simple task pattern instead of this crazy kind of callback pattern that is asynchrony of the past.
Yep.
And then there's C++ AMP, the ability to do GPU development.
That's a beautiful one.
In C++. Like, I don't have to learn some crazy different language dialect. I don't have to drop to C. I can use classes, I can use templates, I can write C++ code and get that to go run on my GPU.
That is a huge one. Absolutely. Now, what about, sort of jumping at the language? I mean, you guys started off on the C++ 11 adoption back in VC10,
Yeah.
and even before that with the tech previews and stuff, right? So you also, as GoingNative, announced new additions. So there's range-based 4 that you guys are going to ship that wasn't previously announced, stateless lambdas, scoped enumeration support. Herb actually talked about at that event that you're going to maybe consider a new ship model. I mean, how do we get these things out? So right off the bat, I just wanted to kind of talk about, this is out the door, it's baked, it's beautiful.
Yes.
But I know you're actually very busy working on what's coming out before the next thing comes out.
That's right.
Without getting into dates and stuff. But I know you guys are working on,
That's right.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about
there?
this. So we've shipped a bunch of C++ 11 support in this release, and you mentioned a number of the features, range-based for loops, etc. We were probably ahead of the curve in terms of in what we shipped in Visual Studio 2010. Lambdas were the big deal, and it turns out lambdas were one of those features that it was like, oh, that's cool when you put on your tinfoil hat and write some code, like those are really neat. And it turns out, like, holy cow, lambdas dramatically simplify the way you write code, and you can now create libraries that feel like an integrated language experience. So that was huge. We didn't finish. There's a whole bunch more C++ 11 stuff, of course, we have to go do, and we're working to go do that right now. So that's part of the reason why people, these buildings are not empty, like people are here, and C++ 11 is one of the things that they want to do. One of the things that Herb talked about at GoingNative several months back is we'd love to be able to show customers our early work on C++ 11, beyond all the things we've delivered in Visual Studio 2012. And right now, I think we're on target to do that before the end of the calendar year, to give them something to kind of look at and say, yeah, you guys are making interesting progress.
Absolutely.
So you're right. I don't want to talk too much about like specific ship dates, blah, blah, blah. But I will say this. The age of customers having to wait 2 to 3 years to get new drops of value from Visual Studio, those are kind of, those days are kind of behind us, and we're looking for ever more creative ways to drop value to customers on a more frequent cadence.
Great.
Including C++ 11.
Excellent. Now, I remember when we had the conversation we had where the term C++ Renaissance was born was with Mohsen and Craig.
Yeah.
And of course, Mohsen has retired, which is
Again.
sad. Again. I know he's probably going to come back. But one of the things Mohsen said was, you're going to see in C++, in VC11, so Visual Studio 2012, C++ actually not just following and lagging behind or trying to catch up to, the managed stuff, sort of our shiny stuff that was new back 10 years ago. But we're going to actually lead the way with some very interesting IDE enhancements. So, look, C++ developers who use Visual Studio, they live in an IDE too, man.
Yep.
What have you done that sort of backs up what Mohsen was saying?
Yeah, when we talk about C++ and what we're going to do in that space, we always try to keep it to what's special about C++. It's not about catching up to some other language or catching up with somebody else's features. You really think about what are the unique strengths of C++ and why people use it, and you try to add value there. And from our perspective, people use C++ for many reasons, and among the reasons that people use it is being close to the hardware. So how do you leverage the most out of the hardware, and how do you create applications? Whether from a performance perspective or whether from leveraging, being close to the metal or writing something system level or any of that. So how do you provide tools that enable people to do that? We also talk about compatibility with existing code, and you have a lot of C++ investment. You don't want to rewrite that. You want to use it and bring it forward and use it in the new world, use it in new applications. We also talk about it in the context of cross-platform. People care about a number of platforms inside Microsoft and outside Microsoft from other vendors, and people care about the availability of code on those places, and how do you write code that can be compiled on those different platforms and be reused on those different platforms. And that's where things like C++11 and conformance come into play. So we try to add value there. That's where we think about. ID is absolutely, as you mentioned, one of the core things that we try to do. We look at specific things that would bring value to C++ developers. We know C++ developers have a typically large source bases, and we did the survey a while back, and we're talking to people about the size of their source bases and how old their source bases are, and how much they keep innovating in them, and how much of them are like 10 years old versus 5 years old versus 2 years old. And it was amazing to us. The age of the code base sort of varies. There are so many things that are 5, 10 years and older, and there's so many things that were just created last year, and it's amazing how much code actually gets written in C++ every year. So we did things to allow that scalability, specifically around IntelliSense. We've heard a lot of feedback about, hey, you made correctness in IntelliSense better, performance needs to catch up, and we did a lot of work in doing that. We also added some really good features in terms of in the editor, things that you would do day in and day out, or 10 times a day, or 100 times every minute. How do you make those easier for you to use? Things like reference highlighting, for example, or things related to finding relationships between code and callers and callees, and making that more available within your normal workflow. So there are lots of features in there.
Absolutely.
I think I would add one thing here as well, which is game development. It turns out that with the advent of kind of I don't know what you want to call it, snack size application, like the way people acquire software, particularly in the mobile space, it's like it's not like I go to Egghead like I did in the early 90s and buy a big shrink wrap and then come install it. Like I go to my app store, I buy some software. It's generally much less expensive and more ubiquitous. And the bar for user experience for these things is at the same time so much higher. Like mice and menus and toolbars do not cut it anymore. Like people want immersive, graphically rich, touch and gesture enabled experiences. And it turns out C++ is the way to deliver that stuff. We recently announced that, for example, a C++ development model will be available on the phone, on the Windows Phone for the first time. And so what that means is now I can write a DX game in C++, and I can take my source code from big Windows, from a Windows tablet or a big Windows client or even a server, and I can take a substantial chunk of that code, especially if it's a DX app, maybe the whole thing, and also run it on the phone. So this idea of a ubiquitous, immersive, graphically rich experience, C++ is truly leading the way on. And it makes sense, right? This is a close to the hardware thing. This is a high performance thing. So it makes sense for C++ to be in the lead here, like Tarek said. This isn't about trying to like, oh, look, Python's got this cool thing. Hurry, guys, let's go over here and do this thing Python's doing.
Yes.
It's about being true to the fact that we know why people are using C++. They care about performance. They care about being close to the hardware. They care about cross-plat. And they care about compatibility with their existing code bases and skills. As long as we keep that in mind and add value in this space, I think we're in good shape.
Absolutely, and like specifically in the DX tooling, my favorite two things that we added in this, like DX space and graphics space, we added support for PIX debugging inside Visual Studio. So now, from within the Visual Studio tool for a Windows application, you're able to do sort of traces for DX calls and be able to figure out why this pixel is blue and what kind of things ended up in that. You do some really specific to the unique scenario that you would do using C++ and do that kind of specific debugging and make it available. So that's a great thing. Also in terms of asset modeling, when you're creating a game or even like a rich graphics app, as you say, the user experiences that people start to expect today, you need to deal with a lot of assets, a lot of models, and importing those models into Visual Studio and being able to view them and pan them and and see exactly, when you add a light somewhere, what does it look like? You can do that all from within Visual Studio. So that's, again, part of the unique experience that we try to deliver for C++ and add value there.
Absolutely. I mean, and there's also the other efficiency, which is power efficiency, right? We don't talk about that as often as probably we should, because if you look at like our competitors, so for example, the iPhone, where Objective-C that's the language you program in. I mean, you can use C++ and C, of course, but a lot of people are using Objective-C. There's a reason why it's native. It's running on LLVM. It's still really close to the hardware. It's to preserve battery life. You want to compute and conserve electrons at the same time. You don't want to have a big virtual machine overhead and runtime overhead to the extent that other languages do, Java, .NET, etc. So that's important for your mobile device experience, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Mobile and data center. This is a concept that scales up. On mobile, it's like, I don't want to recharge my phone during the day. In a data center, it's like, wow, I pay real dollars for those apps.
Per cycle.
For every CPU cycle. I want to get in and out. So sometimes people call this time to halt. Like, I want to solve a problem. What is my time to halt when all my CPUs can go idle? I did a lot of work on parallel computing here in DevDiv, and we often talked about it from a performance standpoint. Like, hey, let's create these new immersive application experiences. Let's unlock the potential of the hardware for developers. It turns out there are two sides to this coin. One is like getting the answer more quickly or getting the experience you need. The other is like, and it turns out when you do this, you're much more power efficient. Whether you're doing vectorization, whether you're doing GPU, whether you're doing parallel computing with multi-core, all these things tend to be much more battery efficient. The fewer instructions you can get away with executing to accomplish a task, or the lower the clock cycle you can do them at. In the case of multi-core, instead of cranking up the clock cycles, you can use lower power chips, but more of them. You save battery,
Absolutely.
or you save money in the data center.
Sure. I mean, if you look at if C++ gets libraries to the extent that many other programming models have, from JavaScript to Java to C#, they have immense library infrastructures, right? You can find a library for anything in JavaScript, right? I could write a media encoder in JavaScript now. There's a library for this. So I know Herb has been working really hard. I know, I've had many conversations. I was down there at C++ and Beyond.
Yes.
And we actually talked about that in one interview. But, when we get general purpose libraries that are standardized and, I'm kind of wondering to myself, as the language modernizes also, you could use C++ for more than just the system specific and the performance specific stuff. But you could write data snacking apps in a beautiful, modern-looking language that has libraries where you could say, make a web request in 2 lines of code instead of implementing, on top of IXML HTTP requests.
Yeah.
I mean, that's coming. So this is a long-winded way to get into Casablanca.
Yes.
What's the status of Casablanca? I haven't heard much about it since I last talked to the...
Still working on it. We did a refresh of Casablanca, I don't know, I guess a month ago to be compatible with the release preview, the release candidate of Visual Studio. We're going to continue to work on Casablanca. The way we think about it is it's the Azure SDK for C++. Azure has a bunch of SDKs for doing, one, just kind of core asynchrony, REST-based programming. And then specifically, Azure surfaces its own API surface area as REST, by and large. So Win32 is C-style, Windows 8 is Windows RT, and Windows Azure is REST. And so we want to make those APIs very easily accessible. It also turns out that REST is kind of the lingua franca of asynchronous web applications, kind of made popular by JavaScript and the AJAX pattern. This has to be easy in C++. This isn't like wouldn't it be nice if this is this is how people write software today, guys. We need to make this really easy because this is just how people make their API surface area available when they're web services that exist in the cloud. So you'll see more of that. We're going to continue to do releases of Casablanca to kind of every time we get a big chunk of work done. That team is working in a kind of an agile manner, so they've got their backlog of stuff and they're burning through one issue at a time, driving each issue to completeness. And then when we get critical mass of kind of feature value, we'll put that out there again so that folks can enjoy it. More largely, though, your question, Charles, was kind of the C++ library space. It turns out that C++ does not suffer from a lack of libraries.
True.
Quite the contrary, C++ suffers from the fact that there are too many of them, and they're very undiscoverable, and they don't compose really well together, and everybody wants to then write their own because they're not sure, hey, is this trustworthy? Is it composable? There's
licenses,
yeah,
and all
can I
of
use
these
this
issues.
license with this license? It's just, there's so many crazy issues, and I think that's one of the key problems to solve. It's not C++ needs libraries, it's that C++ needs a safe playground with nice tanbark and a happy jungle gym for all the libraries to play together.
Totally.
That's right.
And they need to be standardized, but they also need to be, things need to be simpler.
Yeah, it's not about getting the C++ standard library to be as big as the Java libraries or the .NET libraries, but it's about extending the reach of libraries that everybody gets on their machine when they get a version of any compiler to be able to cover the main things that you want to be able to do in your application. Things like asynchrony, or things like communication, or things like XML parsing, or like some of the core things that any application today will do. You got to be able to use that readily, as opposed to have to go and do a competitive analysis of 7 different libraries and which one do I use and which one fits with me and does it integrate with my code and compose with the rest of the libraries or not.
Sure.
And am I going to be concerned that that vendor is going to get out of business in my 3rd release? There are lots of things that you have to think about, and we'd love to be able to get to a place where with C++ you don't have to make those decisions for things that are not very specialized.
Absolutely.
There's an old Devo song about freedom of choice, and that might not be what you really want.
Yeah.
And that's part of the issue here is like C++ developers really want this freedom of choice. On the other hand, one of the virtues of how, say, .NET and Java and some other language environments have gone is they've landed on, no, this is how we do XML parsing in our programming model for our language. You do it this way. And one, that takes away some choice, but on the other hand, people can go, okay, I don't need to think about that. Let's all snap to library X to do XML parsing, and then build on top of that. C++, we still tend to get stuck in this like, hey, let's do an evaluation of the 7 XML parsers and which one's going to work best for me. We just have to get out of that mode. And to do this, we do need to give up a little bit of choice in order to kind of stand on the shoulders of giants to build some great new things. But I think folks are willing to do that, provided those things that we accept as part of this core standard implementations are good and flexible.
Yeah.
Well,
Post Dev 11, you're starting to see from us in terms of the, we talked about the language space and C++ 11 and more of support there. You also start seeing from us in terms of the libraries and making sure that we have a clean and good story there. So these are sort of things to look forward to. Of course, we've announced 2 other things that we're going to be doing after Dev 11 that we're releasing, whether it's the XP support or whether it's the support for desktop apps in terms of an Express queue.
Yes.
So those are also 2 things that are coming up after Dev 11 that we already talked about.
That's great. I mean, I love the fact that DevDiv listens to customers.
Yeah.
It's sort of I give Soma a lot of credit.
Important.
Yeah. Well, we love the customer feedback. I think that's one of the good things of being able to have a very large development community and a very vocal development community and have those lines of communication open. It just allows us to keeps us straight sometimes and allows us to get very good feedback for where we should focus next and what we should do for people. So it's something that we love.
Cool. So, I mean, of course, Windows 8 is also available on MSDN for subscribers, and of course, all the rest of the world is going to get all of this in October 26th to be exact, for Windows 8. One thing I'm really curious about is how do you see C++ developers leveraging WinRT and the Windows 8 style apps? I mean, what place are native devs going to have? Are they going to be component writers? Could be a good idea.
Yeah.
Like, talk to me about what do you see in this space? What do you think?
So when we talked about C++ and Windows 8, this for the past about 3 years, we're thinking about what are the different scenarios we're going to support. And I think now we can sort of talk about three distinct scenarios. and many reasons that you would write a C++ app. I don't think people should think about this as you're writing a C++ app only because you want the equal last bit of performance, or there are, as you said, like there are reasons to write a data snacking app if you want it in C++,
Sure.
whether it's for compatibility with assets you have, or you want it cross-platform, or other reasons. So you want like a specific UI experience that you can only get when you do things with DirectX, for example. But in terms of the scenarios that we look at, number one scenario for us is you're creating a C++ application with DirectX as a UI component, whether it's because it's a game or because it has like an advanced graphics UI that you want to be able to leverage. All of those, of course, leverage all the features of Windows 8, like touch, like contracts, like sensors, and all of that is available to you through WinRT. So DX is sort of one scenario. You create a DX app with C++. Another one, and that's one that we really worked hard to enable, is the XAML scenario. So we have, you can create a C++ application using XAML. And we get a lot of those. If you see in the Windows 8 App Store, there's a very, very nice showcase app that I always let people watch to see what they can get with XAML. It's called FreshPaint. You go download the FreshPaint app.
Such a cool app.
It's just an amazing app. And you look at it, and people think XAML, they think controls and boxes and line of business apps. This is actually a very fluent application. It's very beautiful. And it's created using XAML. It's actually a very nice thing because it's sort of a combination between our first scenario, the DX scenario, and the second scenario, the XAML scenario. You can actually mix both of those together, XAML and DirectX. You get XAML to do the controls around things. And again, don't think controls as like a rectangle or button. Controls can really look interesting. Just go look at FreshPaint to see what that would look like. But then the canvas that you have, and like having texture that looks like paper, and then the ink as it flows, or the paint as it flows, and they touch each other and overlap, and you get a bit of the blue ink with the orange ink. That you can only have that kind of control with something like DirectX. So mixing XAML and DirectX is a beautiful thing as well.
Totally.
And lastly is you've sort of touched on it, which is C++ as a component. We have ways to create Windows 8 applications using JavaScript and HTML5. We have ways to create Windows 8 applications using .NET. And sometimes you've worked there, and all of a sudden you want to drop down to use some existing code that you have in C++, or you want to access a special piece of the hardware, or you want to do something in DirectX, and those are only available to you in C++. Do you have to rewrite your app now? No, you can just drop down to a C++ component and then plug that into your JavaScript app or your .NET app. So I see those. You can create a game or an advanced graphics app with DirectX. You can create a nice looking application with XAML with first-class support that we have there in terms of a designer, UI designer, or direct access to WinRT. And finally, you could just create a component that you can consume somewhere else, or even in your own other C++ application. So lots of ways to use C++. And of course, at the core of all of that is our access to WinRT and the new language extensions that we added for C++ CX.
Yes.
Yeah, speaking broadly about WinRT, I just think it's so great that we have a modern application binary interface for the operating system that takes into account that interfaces exist and exceptions exist.
Yeah.
All these modern programming language concepts are finally a first-class citizen in the API of the operating system. For so long, basically the C language was the de facto API for the operating system. And the thing that WinRT brings by saying, hey, this is the API for the operating system, it allows all the languages to go, great, let me snap to interoperating with that API. And so now we get, with WinRT, like Tarek kind of hinted at this, if I can build some GUI or whatever in HTML5, or I can build it in .NET, and I can consume components written in C++ that surface their capabilities as WinRT, and I don't have to get into crazy thunking, interop, pinvoke, blah, blah, blah of the past. Literally, it just works.
Right.
I write a C++ class, I say it's a WinRT class, I expose that, I can consume that from any other language that speaks WinRT. So I think it's going to be a huge boon to developers to not have to be in the plumbing business of how do I make this language talk to this language? We can all kind of snap to this one thing. This also kind of gets to the cross-platform thing, because then the follow-on question is often, okay, so WinRT, you guys did the C++ CX thing, which is not standard C++.
Yep.
What's the deal with that? You guys say you believe in ISO C++, and I think of it like this: if you believe in this goal of WinRT, and I firmly believe in this idea of a modern API for the operating system, Then the next question is, great, what's the best way to expose that to your programming language of choice? JavaScript, VB, C#, whatever it is. In C++, you basically have a couple choices. You can have a complete ISO standard interface, and it's going to look wonky because you're going to stick to kind of C++ concepts and map it to this WinRT thing. Or you can do something a little bit different that feels very natively integrated with the language, but it's not ISO. The decision we made is we're going to optimize around developer productivity here and enable developers to get the best of the platform in the most friction-free manner, because we felt even at the end of the day, even if we allowed them to write ISO code, that is Windows-specific code. Like, you're not going to take this code that consumes Windows API XYZ, even if it's ISO code. You're not going to go run that on a Mac or run that on an iPhone or Linux or whatever. That's your Windows platform code. And this is the new pattern for how people build cross-platform apps. It used to be like, maybe the old Java days, I would write an app once and I would kind of try to run it everywhere, but it would be it would never look native, right? It'd always look a little bit wonky in whatever environment I was running it in. It looked like Java.
Yeah.
Never looked like Windows. It
Never looked
like
native on the
Linux.
platform.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And today, I talked about how the bar is so high for user experience. Like, people need to get at that platform stuff in order to differentiate their apps. And it turns out the new cross-platform pattern that's emerged is, great, on Windows, I'm going to use C++ CX or HTML5 or .NET to build that Windows-specific and get it all that Windows-specific value. If I have this, if I'm writing some game I want to run on all the mobile platforms, I want to go run it on iPhone, I'm going to do that in Objective-C, because that's the way I'm going to get it all the iOS platform goodies. If I'm on Android, I'm going to go write that stuff in Java, because that's the way I get it all their platform goodies. But typically, behind that layer of platform-specific stuff, I've got all this ISO C++ code, and that's the stuff that I can move between these platforms and leverage my investment across multiple platforms. So that's kind of the new pattern that we're seeing emerging for cross-plat.
Great, that's awesome. So that means iOS developers, please start writing some Windows 8 apps, but they're going to have to not do everything in Objective-C. They're going to have to hopefully have some of their stuff compartmentalized into shareable, portable libraries. And it's also true for Windows 8 app developers who want to go to iOS. Make sure you design your apps with a thin platform abstraction layer and all of your hardcore stuff in pure C++.
That's right. And shortly, you'll be able to also bring that code to the Windows phone.
Or C, right?
Or C.
Or C,
C's fine,
absolutely.
man.
C's great.
C's good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on, guys. Hey, thank you for your time. Congratulations. Can't forget that all the time you spent on trying to build this and successfully building this, very modern IDE, very modern version of Visual Studio. And Visual C++ developers are going to be stoked. IntelliSense is rocking and rolling. They got semantic coloring. They have the great, very fast Class Explorer. A bunch of great things you guys have done to make C++ developers productive too.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So that's rock and roll.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
We'll
Thank you,
talk to
Charles.
soon. Thank you,
All right,
man.
Charles.
Right on.
See y'all.
Cheers.
Wow, it's always great to talk to Tarek and Steve. Tarek is such a mellow dude. Steve is passionate and even-keeled. Really brilliant fellows.
They're both very tall.
Very tall as well.
Yes.
So that was a great conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know I did and learned a lot. One of the things that sticks out in my mind from that conversation goes all the way back to what we talked about there as well. Herb Sutter in his great GoingNative 2012 keynote where he mentioned the need for more cohesive, consistent libraries that do modern things for modern developers.
And I definitely, I said, I care about libraries a lot, and I see how, C++ power can be exploited, writing a lot of libraries that use all the feature in the language to write, more performance components. And there is a lot out there, and we see actually an explosion in libraries that do, genius things that you think, oh, how do you do that, man? I mean, they are great, they are great algorithms, great implementation, but we want also that coherence that when you want a set of functionality, you know where to go or how to address it and how to leverage that kind of in a uniform way, more or less, right?
Absolutely.
Without giving up power, without giving up performance.
Totally. So what's the best XML library? What's the best library for me to make a freaking HTTP request?
Yes,
I just want to go make an HTTP request, give me some content.
Yes,
I'm going to parse it.
Play with it.
Which one do I use?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, not everything can be Boost. Boost doesn't do everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to see how this next year is going to progress. I know, having talked to Herb and those guys at C++ and Beyond, they're making progress,
Good.
and we're going to start seeing things sooner than people expect.
Nice.
So that's good news.
That's always good.
Right on. And so finally, next month, we're going to have another one of these.
Yeah.
I did tell people early on that maybe we'd do it more than once a month, but that seems to be the cadence based on the fact that,
We have to
kind
do something.
of busy,
Go on vacation.
go on vacation, kind of busy, and we have other people that we want to talk to around the
Right.
company and the industry that aren't necessarily available once a week.
Yeah.
But agreed, we need to keep the pedal in the metal with native content on C9, so I know I need to do a better job there. And I'm sorry that we missed last month, but hey, that's going to be the only months we miss in a while.
Absolutely.
Right on, dude. Welcome to the show,
Thank you. That's true.
and I'll see you next month.